Tammany, Tammany. Big Chief sits in his teepee, cheering braves to victory. Tammany, Tammany. Swamp 'em, get that wampum. Tammany, Tammany, Tammany. Stick together at the polls, you'll have long green wampum rolls. Tammany, Tammany. Politicians get positions.
Everybody is talking these days about Tammany men growing rich on graft, but nobody thinks of drawing the distinction between honest graft and dishonest graft. There's all the difference in the world between the two. Yes, many of our men have grown rich in politics. I have myself. I've made a big fortune out of the game, and I'm getting richer every day, but I've not gone in for dishonest graft. Blackmailing gamblers, saloon keepers, disorderly people, etc., and neither has any of the men who've made big fortunes in politics. Just let me explain by examples. My party's in power in the city, and it's going to undertake a lot of public improvements. Well, I'm tipped off, say, that they're going to lay out a new park at a certain place. I go to that place, and I buy up all the land I can in the neighborhood. Then the board of this or that makes its plan public, and there is a rush to get my land, which nobody cared for particularly before. Now, ain't it perfectly honest to charge a good price and make a profit on my investment and foresight? Well, that's honest graft. Upstate in the watershed, I made some money too. I bought up several bits of land there some years ago and made a pretty good guess they'd be bought up for water purposes later by the city. It was rather amusing when the condemnation commissioners came along and found piece after piece of the land in the name of George Plunkitt of the 15th Assembly District, New York City. I haven't confined myself to land. Anything that pays is in my line. For instance, the city is repaving a street and has several 100,000 old granite blocks to sell. I'm on hand to buy, and I know just what they are worth.
How?
Never mind that. I had a sort of monopoly on this business for a while, but then a newspaper tried to do me. It got some outside men to come over from Brooklyn and New Jersey to bid against me. Was I done? Not much. I went to each of the men and said, "How many of these 250,000 stones do you want?" One said 20,000, another wanted 15,000, and another wanted 10,000. I said, "All right, let me bid for the lot, and I'll give each of you all you want for nothing." They agreed, of course. Then the auctioneer yelled,
"How much should I bid for these 250,000 fine paving stones, the finest New York City has to offer? I'm looking for a first bid. Who's going to give me a first bid?"
250.
$250, that's a joke. Come on, somebody give me a real bid.
I said $2.50.
$2.50. $2.50 going once, going twice, going, gone.
I got the lot for $2.50 and gave them their share, and that's how the attempt to do Plunkitt ended. And that's how all such attempts end. Now let me tell you, most politicians who are accused of robbing the city get rich the same way. They didn't steal a dollar from the city treasury. That's why when a reform administration comes in and spends $500,000 in trying to find the public robberies they talked about in the campaign, they don't find them. The books are always all right. The money in the city treasury is all right. Everything is all right. All they can show is that Tammany heads of departments looked after their friends within the law and gave them what opportunities they could to make honest graft. So every good man looks after his friends. If I have a good thing to give out in private life, I give it to a friend. What should I do in public life? Give it to mine enemy? Another kind of honest graft. Tammany has raised a good many salaries. Oh, there was an awful howl by the reformers. And the Wall Street banker thinks it's shameful to raise a department clerk's salary from $1,500 to $1,800 a year. But every man who draws a salary himself says, "That's all right. I wish it was me. And he feels very much like voting the Tammany ticket on election day, just out of sympathy. Now, Tammany was beat in 1901 because the people were deceived into believing that it worked dishonest graft. As a matter of policy, if nothing else, why should the Tammany leaders go into such dirty business when there's so much honest graft lying around when they're in power? I want to say that I don't own a dishonest dollar. If my worst enemy was given the job of writing my epitaph when I'm gone, he couldn't do more than write George Washington Plunkitt. He seen his opportunities, and he took 'em.
Oh, Mr. Plunkitt, oh, Mr. Plunkitt, the greatest man the city ever knew, quite diplomatic and democratic. Is Mr. Plunkitt, Plunkitt, Plunkitt true? Oh, Mr. Plunkitt, oh, Mr. Plunkitt, the greatest man the city ever knew, quite diplomatic and democratic. Is Mr. Plunkitt, 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 Mr. George Washington Plunkitt, there is nothing Plunkitt cannot do.
This civil service law is the biggest fraud of the age. It is the curse of the nation. There can't be no real patriotism while it lasts. How are we going to provide for the thousands of men who work for the Tammany ticket? These men were full of patriotism a short while ago, but when we tell them we can't place them, do you think their patriotism is going to last? They say, what's the use of working for your country anyhow? There's nothing in the game. I know more than one young man who worked for the ticket and was just overflown with patriotism. But when he was knocked out by the civil service humbug, he got to hate his country and became an anarchist. I have good reason for saying that most of the anarchists in this city today are men who ran up against civil service examinations. Isn't it enough to make a man sour on his country when he wants to serve it and won't be allowed unless he answers a lot of fool questions about the amount of cubic inches of water in the Atlantic and the quality of the sand in the Sahara Desert? It's an outrage. What is representative government anyhow? Is it all a fake that this is a government of the people, by the people and for the people? If it isn't a fake, then why isn't the people's voice obeyed and Tammany men put in all the offices? Tammany is for the spoils system, and when we go in, we fire every anti-Tammany man from office that can be fired under the law. It's an elastic sort of a law, and you can bet it will be stretched to the limit. No, I know that civil service rot is stuck into the Constitution too, but as Tim Campbell said, what's the Constitution among friends? If a halt ain't called soon, this great republic will tumble down like a Park Avenue house when they were building the subway, and on its ruins will rise another Russian government. Let me tell you that patriotism has been dying out fast for the last 20 years. Before then, when a party won, its workers got everything in sight. Now, when a party wins and its men come forward and ask for their awards, the reply is, nothing doing, unless you can answer a list of questions about Egyptian mummies and how many years it will take for a bird to wear out a mass of iron as big as the earth by stepping on it once in a century. Ah, sad indeed is the change that's come over the young men. The young men don't get excited anymore when they see a United States flag or hear the Star-Spangled Banner. They don't care no more for firecrackers on the 4th of July. They know that no matter how hard they work for their country in a campaign, the jobs will go to fellows who can tell about the mummies and the birds stepping on iron. So let me tell you of one case. After the Battle of San Juan Hill, the Americans found a dead man with a light complexion, red hair and blue eyes. They could see he wasn't a Spaniard, although he had on a Spanish uniform. Several officers looked him over. Then a private from the 71st Regiment saw him and he yelled,
Good Lord, that's Flaherty!
Yes. That young man grew up in my district, and he was once the most patriotic American boy on the West Side. He couldn't see a flag without yelling himself hoarse. How did he come to be lying dead with a Spanish uniform on? I found out all about it, and I'll vouch for the story. In the municipal campaign of 1897, that young man, chock full of patriotism, worked day and night for the Tammany ticket. Tammany won, and the young man, determined to devote his life to the service of the city, he picked out a place that would suit him and sent in his application to the head of the department. He got a reply that he must take a civil service examination to get the place. So he went, all light-hearted, to the Civil Service Board. He read the questions about the mummies, the bird and the iron, and all the other fool questions, and he left that office an enemy of the country that he loved so well. The mummies and the bird blasted his patriotism. He went to Cuba, enlisted in the Spanish army at the breaking out of the war, and died, fighting his country. What is going to happen when civil service crushes out patriotism? The republic will go to pieces. A czar or a sultan will turn up. There will be hell to pay, and that ain't no lie. New York City is ruled entirely by the hayseed legislators at Albany. I have never known an upstate Republican who didn't want to run things here. The hayseeds think we're like Indians to the national government, that is, sort of wards of the states who don't know how to look after ourselves and have to be taken care of by the Republicans of St. Lawrence, Ontario, and other backwoods counties who want to get a hold of this city. New York City is their pie. You hear a lot these days about the downtrodden people of Ireland and the Russian peasants and the suffering people in the Philippines. Now let me tell you, they have more real freedom and home rule than the people of this grand and imperial city. The English, for example, make a pretense of giving the Irish some self-government. In this state, Albany makes no pretense at all. It says right out in the open, New York City is a nice, big, fat goose. Come along with your carving knives and have a slice. And they don't pretend to ask the goose's consent. We've got to eat and drink what they tell us to eat and drink, and have to choose our time for eating and drinking to suit them. If they don't feel like taking a glass of beer on Sunday, we must abstain. If they have not got any amusements up in their backwoods, we mustn't have none, and then we have to pay their taxes to boot. Did you ever go up to Albany from this city with a delegation that wanted anything from the legislature? Well, don't. The hayseeds who are on all the committees will look at you with a patronizing air, as much as to say, these children are an awful lot of trouble. They're wanting candy all the time, and they know that it will make them sick. They ought to thank goodness they have us to take care of them. You heard a lot in the state campaign about the governor's great work in reducing the state tax to almost nothing, and you'll hear about it in the campaign next year. How did he do it? By cutting down the expenses of the state government? Oh, no. He simply performed the old Republican act of milking New York City dry. He not only ran up the liquor tax, but he put all sorts of taxes on corporations, banks, insurance companies, and everything in sight that could be made to give up. Then he went through the country districts and said, see what I've done for you? You ain't got any more taxes to pay the state, ain't I a fine fella? Once a farmer in Orange County asked him,
How'd you do it, Governor?
Dead easy, he answered. Whenever I want any money for the state treasury, I know where to get it. And he pointed to New York City. There's no crime so mean as ingratitude in politics. But every great statesman from the beginning of the world has been up against it. Caesar had his Brutus, that king of Shakespeare's, Leary, I think you call him, had his own daughters go back on him, and I've got mine, the McManus. That's real proof that a man is great when he meets with political ingratitude. Great men have a tender and trusting nature. So have I, outside of the contracting and real estate business. In politics, I have trusted men who told me they were my friends. And if traitors have turned up in my camp, well, I only had the same experience as Caesar and Leary and the others. About my Brutus, McManus, you know, has 7 brothers, and they call him the because he's the boss of the lot. And for several years he was a political bushwhacker. In campaigns he was sometimes on the fence, sometimes on both sides of the fence, and sometimes under the fence. Nobody knew where to find him at any particular time, and nobody trusted him. That is, nobody but me. I thought there was some good in him after all, and that if I took him in hand, I could make a man of him yet. Well, I did take him in hand a few years ago. Oh, my friends told me it would be the Brutus Leary business all over again, but I didn't believe them. I put my trust in thee. I nominated him for the Assembly, and he was elected. A year afterwards, when I was running for election as Senator, I nominated him for the Assembly again on the ticket with me. We both carried the 15th Assembly District, but he ran way ahead of me. Just think, ahead of me in my own district, I was just dazed. When I began to recover, my election district captains came to me and said that McManus had sold me out with the idea of knocking me out of the senatorship and then trying to capture the leadership of the district. My trusting nature couldn't imagine such treachery. I sent for McManus and said in my voice, trembling with emotions, "They say you have done me dirt, Lee. It can't be true. Tell me it ain't true." Thee almost wept as he said he was innocent.
What? Never have I done you dirt, George. Why wicked traitors have tried to do you. I don't know just who they are yet, but I'm on their trail, and I'll find them or abjure the name of V. McManus.
Well, V kept his word as far as going out and finding the traitors was concerned. He found them all right and put himself at their head. He's got them gathered at his club rooms now, and he's doing his best to take the leadership from the man that made him. So you see that Caesar and Leary and me's in the same boat, only I'll come out on top. Now let me tell you that the ingrate in politics never flourishes long. The politician who makes a lasting success are the men who are always loyal to their friends, even up to the gate of state prison if necessary. Men who keep their promises and never lie. Men like Croker and Murphy that stay leaders as long as they live, not men like Brutus and McManus. Now I want to tell you why political traitors in New York City especially are punished quick. It's because the Irish are in a majority. The Irish, above all people in the world, hates a traitor. You can't hold them back when a traitor of any kind is in sight. And remembering old Ireland, they take particular delight in doing in a political traitor. Now most of the voters in my district are Irish. They've spotted the McManus, and when they get a chance at him at the polls next time, they won't do a thing for him. Be faithful to us, and we'll be faithful to you.
Like yours you will allow, and you may have a sister who needs protection now. I've come to New York City to find a brother dear, and you wouldn't dare insult me, sir, if Jack were only here.
I have made a careful study of the Brooklynite, And I can tell you, a Brooklynite is a natural-born hayseed and can never become a real New Yorker. He can't be trained into it. A man born in Germany can settle down and become a New Yorker. So can an Irishman. In fact, the first word an Irish boy learns in the old country is New York. And when he grows up and comes here, he's at home right away. Even a Japanese or a Chinaman can become a New Yorker, but a Brooklynite never can. Once you let a man grow up amidst Brooklyn's cobblestones with the odour of Newton Creek and the Gowanus Canal ever in his nostrils, there's no place in the world for him except Brooklyn. Now, soon after I became a leader on the West Side, I came across a bright boy, about 7 years old, who had just been brought over from Brooklyn by his parents. I took an interest in the boy, and when he grew up, I brought him into politics. Finally, I sent him to the assembly from my district. Now remember that the boy was only 7 years old when he left Brooklyn, and was 23 when he went to the assembly. You'd think he'd forgotten all about Brooklyn? Wrong. When that young fella got into the assembly, he paid no attention to bills or debates about New York City. He didn't even show any interest in his own district. But just let Brooklyn be mentioned or a bill introduced about the Gowanus Canal, he was all attention. Well, the end came when I caught him. One morning I went over from the Senate to the Assembly chamber, and there I found my young man reading. Actually reading a Brooklyn newspaper. When he saw me coming, he tried to hide the paper. But it was too late. I caught him dead to rights. And I said to him, "Jimmy, I'm afraid New York ain't fascinating enough for you. You had better move back to Brooklyn after your present term." And he did. I met him the other day crossing the Brooklyn Bridge, carrying a hobby horse under one arm and a doll's carriage under the other, and looking perfectly happy. You know, I'd rather take a Hottentot in hand to bring up as a good New Yorker than undertake the job with a Brooklynite. Honest, I would. Is coming, and though I'm no youngster, I may yet see it, when New York City will break away from the state and become a state itself. It's got to come. The feeling between the city and the hayseeds that make a living by plundering it is every bit as bitter as the feeling between the North and the South before the war. And let me tell you, if there ain't a peaceful separation before long, we may have the horrors of civil war right here in New York State. New York City has got a bigger population than most of the states in the Union. It's got more wealth than any dozen of them. Yet the people here are nothing but slaves of that Albany gang. We have stood the slavery a long, long time, but the uprising is near at hand. It will be a fight for liberty, just like the American Revolution, and we'll get liberty peacefully if we can, by cruel war, if we must. Just think how lovely things would be here if we had a Tammany governor and legislature meeting, say in the neighborhood of 59th Street, and a Tammany mayor and board of aldermen doing business in City Hall. How sweet and peaceful everything would go on. You wouldn't hear of any conflicts between the state and city authorities, and every bill introduced in the legislature by Tammany would be sure to go through, and the Republicans wouldn't count. the Constitution of the new state wouldn't have a word about civil service. And if any man dare to introduce any kind of a civil service bill in the legislature, he'd be fired out the window. That's the kind of government Lincoln meant. Oh, what a glorious future for the city. Whenever I think of it, I feel like going out and celebrating, and I'm really almost sorry that I don't drink. Now, I don't wish I was a poet, but if I was, I guess I'd be living in a garret on no dollars a week instead of running a great contracting and transportation business, which is doing very well, thank you. But honest now, the notion takes me sometimes to yell poetry of the red, hot, hail, glorious landkind when I think of my New York City as a state all by itself.
Tammany, Big Chief sits in his teepee, cheering braves to victory. Tammany, politicians get positions. Tammany.
The Democratic Party of this nation ain't dead, though it's been given a lifelike imitation of a corpse for several years. It can't die while it's got Tammany for its backbone. The trouble is that the party's been chasing after theories and staying up nights reading books instead of studying human nature and acting according. In 2 presidential campaigns, the leaders talked themselves red in the face about silver being the best money and gold being no good, and they tried to prove it out of books. Do you think the people cared for all that guff? No. They heartily endorsed what Richard Croker said at the Hoffman House one day in 1900. What's the use of discussing what's the best kind of money, said Croker. I'm in favor of all kinds of money, the more the better. See how a real Tammany statesman can settle in 25 words a problem that monopolized 2 campaigns? Then imperialism. The Democratic Party spent all its breath on that in the last campaign. Its position was all right, sure enough, but you can't get people excited about the Philippines or the Panama Canal. They've got too much at home to interest them. They're too busy making a living to bother about the natives in the Pacific. The party's got to drop all them put-you-to-sleep issues and come out in the next election for something that will wake the people up, something that will make it worthwhile to work for the party. And there's just one issue that would set this country on fire. The Democratic Party should say in the first plank of its platform, "We hereby declare in National Convention assembled that the paramount issue now, always and forever is the abolition of that iniquitous and villainous civil service law which are destroying all patriotism, ruining the country and taking away good jobs from them that earn them. We pledge ourselves when our ticket is elected to repeal these laws at once and put every civil service reformer into jail." Just imagine the wild enthusiasm of the party if that plank was adopted and the rush of Republicans to join us in restoring our country to what it was before this college professor's nightmare called civil service reform got a hold of it. Of course it would be all right to work in the platform some stuff about the tariff and sound money in the Panama and the Philippines, as no platform seems to be complete without them, but they wouldn't count. The people who read only the first plank and then hanker for election day to come to put the Democratic Party in office. I see a vision. I see the civil service monster lying flat on the ground. I see the Democratic Party standing over it with a foot on its neck, wearing the crown of victory. I see Thomas Jefferson looking out from a crowd saying, "Give him another sockdolager, finish him off." And I see millions of men waving their hats and singing.